once a week, sit down with your transaction coordinator and go through all the files. So I did that every Wednesday at 12:15. I sat down with my transaction coordinator. We went through all the files. That was like my first system.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. I'm Monte Reyment, your host. Today we got a special guest out of California, Melinda Elmer, who is the team lead and owner of the Elmer team at Century 21. Really, you specialize in the Long Beach, Southern California area, certified divorce real estate expert and probate trust specialist. So working closely, I would imagine, with those who are going through some pretty tough times in their lives. And so I think that's a really good conversation for today and what we'll get into. But welcome to the show, Melinda.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Love it. So just like I do every podcast, tell us your backstory. How'd you get started in real estate and why are you still here?
So I got started in real estate. I really, frankly, just wanted to buy my own house. And I went to meet with a real estate agent and sat down with that agent. And now this was back in 2000. Prices were a little bit less expensive than they are today. And I think at the time I qualified for $250,000. So again, prices were lower. So I sat down with this agent, and this agent said, you need to buy a condo. I said, I don't want to buy a condo. I want to buy a house. And I wanted to be, I didn't care where it was. I just wanted a house so I could have a yard and fixer-upper kind of thing so I could do it myself. So at the time, I just started taking real estate classes because I figured she was just kept trying to push me in this direction I didn't want to go. So I started taking classes and said, oh, now I can buy my own house. Not understanding how everything worked. And then I started taking the classes and realized that this was something that I could do for a living and that I would probably really enjoy it. And here I am 23 years later.
Love it.
And I do enjoy it.
And still loving it. That's a great sign. If you can do anything for that long and still like it, that's amazing. So
exactly.
Love that. So again, certified divorce real estate expert, probate specialist, life's transitions. And I think in real estate, we haven't really touched on this topic yet, which I'm really glad we can get into, but having tough conversations, because you're dealing with some real, like, people. I did a speaking event in front of lenders once, and somebody had pointed out to me and said, why do all of a sudden I can have a great conversation until somebody gets pre-approved, and then once they get an offer accepted, they turn into like the craziest person in the world? And I sat back and thought about it for a second before I answered. And I said, the reason is their lives are upside down. They have to sell a house. They got to pack up all their stuff. Then you're asking them for documents and all the things. They may not know where it is in the computer files, or maybe it's paper copies or whatever. And then you have to expect that person to be non-anxious, not nervous, like their whole life is upside down. And then you have to ride that all the way till closing, when they have people coming into their house for inspections and appraisals and all the other things. And obviously taking it a step further, then you're dealing with the loss of a life, or you're dealing with a breakup and a divorce. That even adds more to it. So I think a lot of agents will avoid those tough conversations. How does that, first of all, touch on that, and then we can get into more on those kind of, because that's a whole conversation.
Yeah, selling a house is stressful, right?
Yep.
Like you said, it's one of the most stressful things people go through. And then we throw divorce or a loss of a loved one on top of that, and it's even more stressful. Mm-hmm. Then you've got they say like the top 4 things that are stressful in life is moving, death, and divorce, right?
Mm-hmm.
Top 3.
Yep.
So we've got 2 of them combined on top of each other. And in those situations, it definitely takes a little bit extra compassion, empathy, and understanding. I went through my own divorce, and so that helped me have some additional empathy. And then some of it is just, I'm confident in what I know, and where my lane is in that process as well. It ultimately is to sell the house, right?
Yep.
But it is sometimes having those conversations in understanding that they're not mad at me if they're having a difficult conversation with me. They're not mad at me. They're mad at the situation. Mm-hmm. So I can't take anything that's being said during that time personally, because it's not about me. It's about their situation, especially in the divorce situation. There may be child custody issues that I'm not aware of, that I'm not even part of. They may be losing the right to have their kid. and I'm worried about keeping the house clean. They don't care about that. So it's putting that into perspective and having that empathy. When I call them and say, hey, we got an offer, they may not be as excited as we are, right?
Yeah.
Or that we've closed. They may
true.
not be excited. So it's definitely framing it, keeping it in perspective, and having that understanding that they may not be excited about it.
For sure. So why did you steer towards that? What was it about those two areas? Because they are more difficult transactionally, for sure, for anybody that's dealing with it. So why did you steer towards that?
I went through my own divorce, and I did it back in 2007 and 2008 when the market was tanking.
Yeah, even a better time to do it, yeah.
Yeah, it was a great time. And I helped a lot of people during that time too, because so many people lost so much during that time. In some ways, it was a little bit easier for people to let go of their house. If you bought it for $600,000 and now it's worth $3, it's easier to wipe the slate clean and just walk away from it at that point. Yeah. Whereas now, maybe they bought it 20 years ago and now it's gone up and there's all this equity tied up in there, and they may never be able to afford buying another home again now because the prices have gone up so much and interest rates are higher, right? So it's a little bit, people hold on to it a little bit tighter, I feel like, right now. But why did I get into it? I think that I like a little bit of the challenge of helping people through that process. And again, I've taken classes, I've taken courses, and had a lot of experience in understanding people and their situations that they're going through. So to me, it's a fun challenge to be able to help people through this process that frankly sucks for most people. Mm-hmm. And I want to be the one who can do it with compassion for them. And I think there's a little bit of responsibility to myself that I am really good at this, so I can help these people who need it the most, instead of them getting, I hate to say this, but instead of working with their brother-in-law or their sister-in-law or a family member who is going to muck it up. And I don't want them to have that experience.
Yep. Now, in these situations, especially divorce, I mean, I know it happens in probate cases and other things like that where there's conflict with another family member, or in divorce for sure there's conflict 90% of the time, I would imagine. So how do you navigate that?
The conflict piece of it?
Yeah. It's unavoidable in real estate. If you're in it long enough,
it is.
There's always conflict. But how do you navigate because you don't know what you're walking into sometimes. You don't know that there's immediate tension, and you generally a lot of times only hear one side of the story versus the other side of the story. So how are you navigating that? Because it's not a normal black and white listing where it's like, hey, come list my house, and then you do this. You have a lot more to it that goes on.
No, and I have a set of systems that I utilize for that. I follow a very strict process. So for example, I don't meet with the parties together. So that helps because right then and there, I'm not putting them in the same space.
Right.
So I don't need to create more conflict, more trigger. I made this mistake in the past, and I had both sellers on a Zoom call with me, and it was the first time that the wife had seen the husband since they split up, and she was in tears. She was heartbroken through she couldn't function during that meeting, and I felt awful. And I haven't done a Zoom meeting with divorcing couples since then, or in-person one. I want to have separate meetings with them because ultimately that gives them a space where they can have individual conversations with them. But I also don't bring the drama into it. I don't need to know what they did to each other or who did what. That's not important at this point. What's important is keeping their focus on moving forward.
Yep.
Right? I have separate conversations. I don't need them tagging on to whatever joint email that I send. I don't need that coming with them fighting back and forth about other stuff.
Right.
They get separate communications, separate conversations, and everything is separate, but equal. But I also don't represent buyers on those cases either, because it's conflict of interest. I've already got two people who are at odds. I don't need to add a third party to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
So when you get that situation, do you just pass that off to you get a referral out of it?
Yeah, I'll just pass it off to somebody else. But realistically speaking, if you're doing your job, you probably are not double-ending 95% of your transactions.
Right.
Right? Most of the time, people are going to come and bring a buyer anyway.
Yep. Yep. So what, maybe like a situation, you don't, obviously can't share any names or anything, but what's the craziest thing you've run into?
Oh boy, there's been so many. I've had things like where there was a case where we had a notary was signing grant deeds, and the husband was mad about something, so he grabbed the notary's documents and flung them at her and scared her, and she left. So we had to fight that all out.
Wow.
I've had cases where we've had to go back to court because one party wants to offer $300 and the buyers are asking for $20,000 in a repair credit because the foundations need some work. I had a probate case where they had been selling it for sale by owner to a contractor who came in and do some work to the house, and then they dragged that contract out for 8 months. It had an empty pool, and if you don't know, if the house has an empty pool, can't get financing, especially FHA, which the offer was an FHA offer.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So they had an empty pool and peeling paint everywhere, termite everywhere, and it was an FHA buyer. So they were under contract for 8 months. I helped them get out of that contract, sold it for $150,000 more than what they were in contract with that particular buyer, and closed it. But they fought over the money for almost a year and a half later.
Holy cow.
So they didn't get the money from the house because there was co-trustees, which I never recommend. But they had co-trustees, and the co-trustees two sisters who hated each other, and it took them forever to get that.
Yeah, I had one of those as well where I was the buyer on it, and I was also the agent, and we got to about 4 days before closing, and all of a sudden the probate officer was changing all the locks. And I came there for my final walkthrough, thankfully, the same time she was changing all the locks. I'm like, what is going on? And I was like only a year into the business at the time. And she said, one of the sisters is wanting to come and take all the stuff. And I bought it fully furnished with all the appliances and everything. And she's saying all this stuff is her personal items. And so the probate officer really got on my side throughout this transaction. We got it to the closing line, but we got to closing and come to find out, like, this sister was basically running this property that was willed to her and her sister, and was running it as an Airbnb. And I know it does well because I've been running it now for 5 years, but the craziest part was she didn't pay any mortgage, didn't pay any taxes. She had water bills for 3 years, and basically it was a pre-foreclosure, and I didn't know that going in. The listing agent didn't let me know that, and so we got to closing, but the one sister, she didn't get anything out of the whole thing, and that was all her dad left. And $375,000 went down the drain because her sister was basically stealing from her, and it was crazy. I almost had to bring money to closing. That's how close it was.
Stuff happens like that all the time.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
So this seems to be a common theme with agents that feel like they're struggling. And you brought it up before, and you said the word systems, right? So you have your system, and you keep things separate. Obviously, it's important in businesses, but can you reiterate to those agents who are struggling why systems are so important?
When I was a brand new agent, I started coaching with Mike Ferry, who is all about systems.
Yep.
But the first thing he taught me was once a week, sit down with your transaction coordinator and go through all the files. So I did that. Every Wednesday at 12:15, I sat down with my transaction coordinator. We went through all the files. Mm-hmm. That was like my first system, right? And then the other things involved systems around my schedule, for example. In the morning, I would come in, I would do my role play, and then I would prospect. And then in the afternoons, if I didn't have any appointments, which in a brand new agent, I didn't have any appointments, I would do more prospecting, right? Or I'd go preview property. So the schedule almost even became a system. And then I think it was even my TC who taught me this. She said, look, if you do things the same way every time, no one can ever accuse you, or they might accuse you, but they can't ever prove that you're discriminating or anything like that. So she said, always do things the same way every time. So I really took that to heart and was like, okay, we're going to do these processes the same way every time. And it it makes it simple. Everything, it makes everything simpler.
And I would imagine then you don't feel the burnout that a lot of agents have, and that's where
There are
the system.
times when I do, certainly, right?
Oh, we all do, yeah.
You get 25 deals going at the same time, and you got another six listings coming on the market, and three of them are total dumpster fire files. You're
Oh, yeah.
going to feel a little fried. But part of my systems now is I'm off on Sundays. My goal is to leave the office by 5:30, and I get in at 8. So I have a schedule, right? All of those things are predictable for me, so I know what to expect. And I'm always looking for ways to fine tune and tweak those systems. And I follow a schedule. There's just so many, and I've been doing it for so long at this point. It's like almost everything is systematized. My script, the language that I use is systematized. Everybody's using ChatGPT or whatever to do things these days, but so much of what I do is systematized anyway. I don't need ChatGPT to tell me how to make a better schedule, right? Like I have to look at it and go, okay, what can
Yeah,
I do to make a better system for this?
yeah, 100%. Now, with that being said, how much does your niche now play into that? Because I would imagine after 23 years, you've laid it out, and you probably don't have to prospect as much anymore, if at all. I'm sure a lot of your stuff comes through referrals just based on reputation and your past work experience. But does that niche help with that structure of specializing in those two areas?
I still prospect every day. Do I have to make 150 just listed, just sold calls to get an appointment? No. But I still call my past clients in my database. I talk to the attorneys that I work with. I get a lead that comes in, I still have to call them. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm still on the phone a good portion of every day. And then the rest of the time I'm out in the field on appointments. Where I would say it's given me a lot more freedom is the boundaries that I've set up around it so that I can go home at 5:30 and not really have to worry about answering my phone, because I'm not worried if somebody calls and they go away because I don't pick up at 7 o'clock at night, then they're not the right client for me, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
Whereas if I was a newer agent, I might have been like, oh no, I lost that lead or whatever. But yeah, every day I still look for new business.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. For those who are wanting to get into that probate divorce type of niche, how does somebody get started in that area?
I probably wouldn't start with divorce.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not saying that. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody 3 or 4 years into the
Three,
business.
4 years in, I would start there with your database, because it's going to be generally lower conflict. And if they know you already, then it's more likely that they will work with you there. There are a couple of classes out there that I would highly recommend taking. There's the divorce boot camp through the Alumni Institute. It's probably a really good place to start. It gives you some good overview stuff. But you can learn about mediation techniques, things like that. But the two biggest things that I would say on the divorce side of things, if you're working that, is, let me go with 3. One is, please do not announce to the world that it is a divorce sale. Marital status is a protected class. And I can't tell you how many times that I've walked into a property, or that I call the seller and ask them questions about the sale, and they say, "Oh, it's a divorce transaction." No, don't do that. That is not your place to share.
For sure.
2, keep all your communication separate and keep good records of everything, because if even in the most amicable divorce, it can turn south in an instant, and if it does, you need to treat everything like the court is reading it. And if you do, that would be a huge help. And number 3, do not sell to attorneys like real estate agents. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
We go to I work with the attorneys, and it is a business to business, not a client situation. Like when I call clients, I'm like, hey, who do you know that's looking to buy or sell a house? Who's looking to move? Do not call an attorney and say that. They don't want to hear from you like that. If you're going to go to them with something of value that's going to be helpful to them, and in that vein and then that spirit, you're not trying to sell them on you. They can sniff out in about 2 seconds how good you are or not, because they've done enough business, they know.
Yeah,
But
and
they're also not that scary.
I would imagine an attorney is looking for more solutions than they are more problems.
Correct. They have enough to do. They do not need to fend off a bunch of salespeople, and they don't need your spam with your recipe cards or your just listed, just sold emails. They do not need all of that stuff.
Fine.
They
They're
can
not gonna
barely
get
keep
my
up with
fish
their email.
recipe then.
Yeah.
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 I love it. I love it. Melinda, this has been awesome and some really great nuggets here. Any advice for those that feel they struggle, they're maybe in a rut, or they just feel they suck at this business? What words of encouragement can you give them to hopefully help them out of the rut?
I would say get yourself a coach of some sort. So most of the coaches out there have systems that you can follow. Professional athletes have a coach, right? Whoever your favorite sports star person is, they have a coach. They probably have 5 or 6,
Yep.
frankly, right? So find someone that you respect and look up to. For me, it's Mike Ferry, right? But there are gazillions of coaches out there. So find one that resonates for you, that works for your business, and have them help you set up those systems. Because probably the place you're struggling is that you're in a reaction mode instead of being proactive. And if you're reacting all the time, you're going to get burned out really fast and leave the business.
That's some great advice. I love it. Guys, that's Melinda Elmer out of Southern California. Melinda, thank you so much for coming on the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. If anybody's looking in Southern California to buy houses, maybe they're going through divorce or probate, how can they find you?
They can reach me at 562-316-2915 or melinda@theelmerteam.com or at www.theelmerteam.com.
Love it. Thanks again, Melinda. It was awesome having you on, and appreciate the advice. And yep, it was a really good one. It was a new topic for us. So loved having you here, and thank you for your expertise. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. So that's a wrap here on the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with me and our guests. The people you hear on this show really aren't guessing. They've been doing the work. They've been doing it for a long time. They're sharing their behaviors, their habits, their successes, their systems that actually lead to real work, real success. So please subscribe and follow so you don't miss the next conversation. Until next time, remember, you don't suck. You're learning. It's the beginning, or maybe you're in a rut, but you don't suck. So make a few changes, stay curious, stay consistent, and please keep coming back.